What's going on, everybody? Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason, and in today's video, we're going to be previewing the West Final between the BC Lions and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Break this matchup down by the numbers to see who has the edge in this matchup. So BC and Winnipeg met 3 times during the regular season, with Winnipeg winning 2 of the 3 matchups. The first matchup was in week 3 of this season, where the BC Lions went into Winnipeg and won 30-6. Very surprising result, one of the more surprising results on the season, really early in the season, and ultimately at the end of the day, BC walks away with a very impressive victory at IG Field, one of the most impressive victories on the road in Winnipeg in quite some time. And then they don't meet again until week 9, in Winnipeg again, where Winnipeg wins 50-14, this time with Dane Evans at quarterback for the BC Lions. So hard to get a proper judge on that matchup, but ultimately Winnipeg blows them out in the rematch. And then in the third and final matchup was the best game between these two teams this season. Week 18, 34-26 in overtime in favor of Winnipeg. BC played really well in the first half of that game, but ultimately at the end of the day, Winnipeg just showed that championship medal and came back at the end and forced overtime and ultimately won it there. So at the end of the day, Winnipeg wins 2 of the 3 matchups between these two teams. 2 blowouts, like either team won one blowout in this matchup. But then the third and final matchup was a really great game between these two teams this season. Now, in terms of the quarterback matchup in this one, Vernon Adams Jr. for the BC Lions, a really strong season for him this year. 16 games played, 4,769 passing yards, 31 touchdowns, 18 interceptions, while completing 68% of his passes. One of the true candidates for the Most Outstanding Player award this season. And another worthy candidate for Most Outstanding Player this season was Zach Collaros, quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who also played 16 games this season, 4,263 passing yards, 33 touchdowns, 15 interceptions to go along with 69% completion percentage. So 2 of the very best quarterbacks in the CFL going at it in this West Final. Now, looking at the team stats for this matchup, it's going to be very interesting to see how some of these matchups play out. So in terms of points per game, Winnipeg has the edge there, 33 points per game this season, which is first in the CFL, slightly above the Toronto Argonauts. And then BC is third in the CFL, 27.5 points per game. So 2 very high-flying offenses going head-to-head in this matchup. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, in terms of points against, Winnipeg has the edge there as well. First in the CFL again with 20.9 points allowed per game. So that Winnipeg defense, as much as it looked like it was slipping at the beginning of the season, they really got their act together throughout the season and ultimately finished as the #1 scoring defense in the CFL. Now BC, on the other hand, finished 4th in the CFL with 24.4 points allowed per game. Still a very good defense, but they kind of had the opposite of Winnipeg, where they started out hot this season. Couple of shutouts against Edmonton, couple really impressive performances like that one in Winnipeg in the first meeting, but ultimately they slowed down throughout the second half of the season and kind of were average throughout the second half of the 2023 CFL season. So very interested to see how the BC Lions defense plays in this one. Now, in terms of passing offense, BC has the slight edge here, 295.3 passing yards per game, which is first in the entire CFL. Very much a pass-heavy team this year for the BC Lions. And then Winnipeg, on the other hand, 278.2 passing yards per game, which is second in the CFL this season. So the 2 best passing games in the CFL going at it this weekend. Now, in terms of rushing offense, this is where you get the big disparity in this matchup. Winnipeg has 139.1 yards per game on the ground, led by Brady Oliveira, the West MLP candidate. Great season from him. Really good offensive line up front as usual for Winnipeg, and ultimately they finished first in the CFL in rushing. Now, BC, on the other hand, finished dead last in the CFL in rushing with 77.8 yards per game. So if BC can find some semblance of a running game, it would really help them in this matchup, especially slowing down that great Winnipeg pass rush. So I'm excited to see how they kind of counteract that going into this matchup. Now, in terms of passing defense, Winnipeg wins this matchup as well, finishing first in passing defense this year, allowing 0.2 yards per game through the air. Once again, just great pass rush up front. They have really good defensive backs back there. Dietrich Nichols, one of the most underrated players in all of the CFL. I would still consider him the #1 defensive back in the CFL, despite not even making the All-Star team this year. So I'm really excited to see how BC's wide receivers match up against those great Winnipeg defensive backs, and the offensive line for BC handles that pass rush for Winnipeg. And then on the other hand, you have the BC Lions, who finished 4th in the CFL in pass defense in 2023. 230.5 yards allowed per game through the air for them. Now, in terms of rushing defense, it's very close here, but Winnipeg has the slight edge here. 88.8 yards allowed per game on the ground, which is 3rd in the CFL this season. And then BC is 4th in the CFL with exactly 99 yards allowed per game on the ground this season. So 2 very good defenses, but you have to give Winnipeg the slight edge in that regard. So very much excited to see what happens with a lot of these matchups and how they play out this weekend, because I think there's some obvious strengths for both of these teams. Now, in terms of the matchups I'm watching for in this one, I've highlighted 3. The BC offensive line versus Willie Jefferson. Look, when it comes down to these big games, it always seems like Willie Jefferson plays his best football, and he always makes a big impact play, whether it be a strip sack or a pass knockdown at the line of scrimmage. I'm looking forward to seeing if BC's offensive line can give Vernon Adams a fighting chance back there, because in that 3rd and final matchup that Winnipeg won, Winnipeg actually had 6 sacks in that matchup. So I think that could play a huge role in deciding who wins this game and how prolific that BC passing offense can be in this matchup. Now, in terms of my second matchup here, is Winnipeg's secondary versus BC's wide receivers. Look, I think that Winnipeg's defensive backs, like I was saying a few minutes ago, have played pretty well this season, but I think at the end of the day, BC's wide receivers are the best in the entire CFL. They go 5 to 6 deep. You have Lucky Whitehead on the bench, for crying out loud. So I'm excited to see if BC's offense can find a matchup that they like against that Winnipeg secondary. I think it could go a long way to deciding who wins this game. And then for the third matchup I have here on the board, I could have went a number of different ways with the other side of the ball. A lot of people will say the running game is going to be very key either way. I think that BC stopping the run is going to be a very important challenge for them to slow down Brady Oliveira. Obviously could win MOP this season. But ultimately, I went with Kenny Lawler, wide receiver for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, against those BC defensive backs. The big thing going into this matchup is that Dalton Schoen, who was arguably the best receiver in the CFL once again this season, he may not play in this game, or at least he won't be at 100% if he plays. So I think Kenny Lawler is going to play a gigantic role in this matchup, and I think he's going to have to be the one that creates big plays down the field for this offense and kind of opens it up underneath. So I'm really excited to see how he does in this matchup. BC has some great defensive backs, some great veteran defensive backs, so I'm excited to see how they kind of move Kenny Lawler around to try to get him his touches and ultimately get him going in this matchup, because I think he's going to be very key with that injury to Schoen. So at the end of the day, that is just a little bit of a breakdown of this West Final matchup between the BC Lions and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Be sure to let me know your pick down below. Personally, I'll be going with Winnipeg in this matchup. If you want to hear my full breakdown of that, be sure to watch my playoff predictions video I released last week. But with that said, hope you guys enjoy the game this weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.